Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Vicktory Life Legacy Spotlight. Today, I have a great guest in the building with us. I'm your host, Dwight Vick, and I have today Dr. Richard Nichols of Unity Reed High School, formerly known as Stonewall Jackson Senior High School. I've known him for quite some time, and it's an honor to have you on, Dr. Nichols. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Just thank you for inviting me and wish we were face to face. But under these circumstances, I'm glad that I can talk to you from my living room and, from your house as well.
Absolutely. You actually have been indirectly and directly a big support of a lot of my endeavors in the community. I've done talent shows at your high school. I have some of your former students who were in my high school internship program, Alexis Jones, who was on the cheerleading squad, who's now a teacher herself down in Hampton, Virginia, my hometown. And also, I've worked alongside your activities director, Kevin Turner. We've done some great programs. Again, as I mentioned, my talent shows, sporting events. We've used your gym for practice. So, and I have a daughter who is
Yeah.
at Unity Reed. So this is a familiar conversation, but I'm going to get in depth. We're going to talk about your legacy and highlight all the great things you've done thus far in your career and your personal life. So,
Thank you.
speaking of that, man, let's talk about it, man. So, you spend a lot of your time making sure students and families in Prince William County, specifically the kids zone to go to Unity Read, find their way. You help them get to where they need to be and provide them with support. You're a leader. You have a staff, administrators, APs. Well, I want to talk about where all started for you, where you started your journey and where you began. So tell us where you grew up and where you
Yeah.
from and what where you grew up and how was it?
So I grew up in Annandale, Virginia, Falls Church, Annandale area. All my siblings, I have three, two sisters and a brother.
Mm-hmm.
We all went to Annandale High School, home of the Adams. So
Mm-hmm.
we have a strong sports tradition and strong academic tradition, as you probably know.
Yes,
The
I
Adams,
do. Yeah.
yeah. So maybe had some games against the Adams.
Yeah, we
Uh,
did.
so growing up, just being involved in your community. Annandale has a rich history, still does. And it just always has been a very integral part of who I am. I did dabble a little bit in some sports, but I was more involved in high school, kind of in the student life as a school leader. I did try wrestling and played a little bit of baseball and football, but maybe my size or whatever factor, I'm a little bigger today than I was back then. But I think I was 95 pounds soaking wet my freshman year in high school. But many of my friends played sports, went on to college, played sports. The rich tradition of just, I think, getting involved. My dad was president of the band boosters
Oh, cool.
for Annandale, and so all my brothers and sisters were in the marching band. My brother was a drummer. My sisters were uh, in the band as well. And my sister was a cheerleader and track, and my sister played softball, and my
Wow.
brother played baseball. So we all, whatever it was, my parents who are still living in Annandale encouraged us to be active and be parts of our community. And like I said, my dad was the president of the band boosters. He was president of the Lions Club. I'm sure you're familiar. I don't know if you've heard of the
Yeah,
Lions
I
Club.
have. I have. Yeah.
My mom's a registered nurse and 79 years old, was just given flu shots last month.
Wow.
My dad is retired from the Washington Post. So, we just grew up that, your community is all you got, and you gotta give back. And if you don't give back, you get out, you get into it, you get out of it what you put into it. So
Absolutely.
that's kind of been my mantra for my entire life, as well as my siblings. And I've enjoyed all my time as an educator.
Absolutely. And I'm sure many people have benefited from that. But I want to talk, Dr. Nichols, about just before we talk about life after Annandale. You, as I
Yeah.
mentioned, you've influenced people. You run a school. You've been in a position of leadership for quite some time. But when you were growing up, Um, re- can you reflect on some people, some teachers, a principal, or coach, someone that you admire that you still reflect on some of their quotes, some of their advice and feedback that helped shape who you are now?
Yeah, I mean, I had some coaches. I wrestled for the legendary Coach Adams. So he was very tough, and he encouraged people never to quit, never to give up. My principal was named Ray Watson, and he was very instrumental. We actually started. We Annandale became a mixture of Thomas Jefferson and Annandale when I was a freshman because Thomas Jefferson became the high school, the magnet school, and so we
Yes.
became
Yeah.
we became much more diverse because we had the communities of Alexandria and Landmark. Like I said, I kind of grew up in the Falls Church, Annandale area, and then, going outside the Beltway, we had uh, communities that now are Woodson. So we had a very large freshman class, and I just remember always feeling like it was very important to be engaged, and that was kind of the thing. Even when I was in high school, we had some very significant tragedies with teen suicide, and
Mm,
as class president, we had to deal with that. I was class president my junior year, and I remember we had lost 5 people to mental health issues, and that's certainly a challenge that we're facing right now,
yeah.
which we've always faced dealing with adolescents. But I just remember the school pulling together and always addressing it, tackling it head on. And, I've gone back to my reunions, and it's very important that people feel connected, while they're there. And then, it's a transient area now in Northern Virginia, much more so probably than when I grew up,
Mm,
or at least it seems more so. But I mean, I still think your roots are your roots, whether you stay in there or whether you go, you leave and go back home to visit family. And so I've always felt that, having that strong tradition and connection was kind of what my coaches and my teachers taught me, that um, have pride in who you are as a school community, be competitive, and do things the right way. So, that was definitely a big part of, what I wanted to instill when I came to Stonewall and now Unity Reed.
absolutely. Absolutely. And the things I'm hearing and seeing, you definitely continuing on that tradition here in Prince William County. But before you obviously became a principal and an educator, you went on to college. Um, everybody has a different story, a reason why they choose schools. For me, I never thought in a million years I would end up being a Virginia Tech Hokie. Ironically, I grew up a UVA fan, and my other school was Notre Dame. So I was heavily recruited, but I was into sports. I knew I was going to college, but I never thought I was going to go to Tech until my senior year when I narrowed down my choices. But for me, that was my best school, best choice for me. But for you, what was the collegiate process like? Did you grow up thinking, okay, these are my target schools, or what, I've always wanted to go to this school, or you went the community college route? What was your journey? What was that choice like for you?
So my parents, both graduated from college. So I was fortunate in that respect. Um, I was definitely influenced by my grandfather, who was an IBM executive, but did not graduate, actually only finished high school. And college, not having a college degree, even back then, he would be over 100 today. But he always stressed to my family that, without a college degree, there's going to be some roadblocks in your life, depending on how high you aspire in your chosen profession. So
Mm,
um, I still have on my desk his think from IBM, their motto.
motto. I
And
remember that. I remember that.
yeah, so he was very instrumental. And like I said, he graduated with a high school degree, which, back then he went to the military, et cetera, and then became an executive for IBM, but kind of got stalled in his career because of that. So
Mhm.
he impressed upon all of his grandchildren, that, going to college and getting your education, your degree was paramount. And my dad as well. My dad was an only child, but he kind of was one of the first people in his family to go to college. My mom, um, back then it was very different. I mean, not everybody went to college, and you could be successful, and you still can without a college degree, but you have to have some further education to fall back on. So My sister went to William and Mary. My other sister went to Tech. My brother went to Mary Washington. I kind of was between UVA and William and Mary, and I don't know what the final factor was. It's kind of ironic. My wife ended up graduating from UVA, and we have season tickets to Charlottesville. We're usually down there every fall, but as a William and Mary graduate, I still uh, cheer on the green and gold.
Hmm.
But I think my sister going to William and Mary and me having that experience, going to see her when she was in college, and she was someone I looked up to as a good student and someone who was always had a clear direction in her life. And I also wanted a smaller campus. I think that was instrumental. The size of Virginia Tech and um, Virginia was
Yeah, yeah.
was a little more than I wanted, and so I landed at William and Mary and had a good 4 years. And but then I went on, to different degrees and have studied in a lot of universities or
Yeah, yeah,
colleges,
yeah.
universities.
And what you and just for me, just I'm nosy, just
Yeah,
myself. What's your PhD
yeah.
in?
So after William Mary, most teachers get their masters before they start. So I went to George Mason, lived at home, got my master's, and then started teaching at Stonewall in 1994. And then I decided that I wanted to be a administrator, or thought I might want to do that. So I went to actually went to the Tech UVA Center, went to University of Virginia, and got my master's at an endorsement or administrative endorsement.
The Falls Church
And then
campus, right?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
so I was at, and then I went to I applied for Virginia Tech in educational leadership and policy studies, and finished my PhD in 2015, I think, or 14.
Dr. Nichols, wait a minute before I ask this question. So
Yeah,
technically, you have some Hokie blood in you.
I have Hokie blood. Well, I have more Hokie blood than you think. So I have seven. I have seven nieces and nephews. Is it seven? So I have six nieces and nephews that all graduated from Virginia Tech.
Whoa, wow.
Yeah. So
Okay.
as I said, my sister went to Tech. So
Yeah,
I support all Virginia schools. It's just that right now, since my wife went to UVA, she was an athletic trainer.
yeah,
Uh, we've been going to games together for, that's sort of how we met.
yeah, yeah.
Down to games together, and so where your money goes is kind of
Oh, no
where
question.
your loyalty goes. But
Yeah.
I cheer for the Hokies as long as they're not playing UVA. Uh, Partly because my wife won't allow it, but
Yeah,
I enjoy all the sports, whether it's Madison, James Madison, William
yeah.
Mary. Virginia is my home, so that's I always cheer for the Virginia
No
schools.
question, no question. And when we're done with this interview one day, I want to talk to your wife. I bet you she knows some of the same athletes that I know. I interviewed Terry Kirby. He was on this Legacy Spotlight,
Oh yeah,
and
she
Terry
was she
Kirby,
was
great guy.
so 1995 athletic trainer, and she Chris Slade, or I don't know if it's Chris Slade, Terry Kirby for sure.
Yeah, Chris Lay was
She
there.
Yeah, I think at the same time, but definitely Terry Kirby she knew very well because she was in the training room. She now teaches at Patriot High School as a science teacher, but she was a trainer in Richmond at Monacan High School for a number of years.
Wow, small world, man. It is such a small world, man. And I wanted to ask you though, you have a lot of students that come through Unity Read. Obviously, you have the Career Resource Center and a lot of teachers with a diverse collegiate background. But as you and I both know, we both work with the youth for a long periods of time. We have both, and we know everyone's not cut out for college. What would be your advice for kids that they're not going to be able to get into a William and Mary or a Mason or a Duke or UVA or a Hamp University or Norfolk State, but they still want to further their career? What are some of the other options that Unity Read or yourself, your administration, informs the kids about?
So our career counselor, Mr. Lawrence, who's been there for over 20 years with me.
Hmm.
I've been there for 27 years.
Hmm.
Uh, the biggest thing is to have a goal. Whether your goal is to graduate from high school and go on to a community college, which right now, uh, especially in a pandemic, But even before that, 2-year education at a community college in Virginia, they have guaranteed admission to most state schools as long as you are doing well. I think you have to maintain a 3.0 or higher GPA. And you can go from Northern Virginia Community College for 2 years, get your basic coursework underway, and transfer to UVA, William and Mary, Virginia Tech, James Madison, Mary, whatever, wherever you want to go, Hampton.
Hmm.
So a lot of our students take that avenue. Um, even some of our more high select students who could go to a school, a 4-year college out of the gate. But there's many factors. Some people don't want to move far from home. Some people have to help family. Some people have to work. Um, I mean, the key thing is to continue your education. And, you know, I think, sometimes people think that 4-year college is the only option to getting a degree. That's so far from the truth. There's programs that we have. We've had, Pathways program with Northern Virginia,
Hmm.
partnership with them. And then even right now, the big emphasis is also on more of the career and technical education. We're adding electricity, so you can get a start in that. We're adding
Nice.
firefighting right now. We've had the cosmetology for a long time. Next year, we're talking about adding a aviation maintenance course, and we're going to partner with a company in Manassas called AIM. So
Awesome.
there's a lot of I've seen many kids, and being in the community for almost 30 years now, I live in Bristow, but I've spent a lot of time in Manassas. My kids do, various sports in Manassas and go to
Hmm.
church in Manassas. So I see people what they're doing, and there's not one path. The biggest thing is just continue to study, get your education, and if you want a 4-year degree and that's your goal, obviously a lot of people choose that avenue, and our kids are getting into selective colleges, but you have to work hard. When you get there, um, I feel we have a good success rate for kids that go on to a 4-year college, but obviously there's a lot of considerations with financial and um,
Sure.
today. Today with the virtual learning, it's very different. But I don't think you should pigeonhole yourself and think, oh, well, you have to go to college to be successful in life, or if I don't go right away, then. Um, I remember when I was growing up, Nova was not viewed very highly,
Yeah.
um, as it is today. It was kind of like, oh, you're just going to Nova. But today, uh, with what they have to offer, it's. I mean, I've taken courses at Nova, and I think that you can get a very good 2-year foundation. So I would, I've had, like I said, very successful students who say that's where they're going to go, and it's not frowned upon as it once was.
Yeah, I completely agree. I've had kids come through the Vicktory Life program, and as well as when I had my high school internship program go through Nova, and many of them went on to JMU and UVA, and
Yeah.
now they're young adults working in corporate America, doing very well. And I'm glad Nova added that credentialing process as far as being able to get that associates and apply to the in-state universities. That's a great perk. I think that's a good motivating factor. Um, I do want to ask you,
I
Doctor.
wanted to mention one thing, that when you
Oh, go
started
ahead.
the interview and you said you grew up in Hampton, I do have some connection to Hampton.
Okay.
My student teaching experience, and I think I may have shared this with you before, but as an undergraduate at William Mary, I student taught at
Phoebus.
Phoebus High School. Yeah.
When were you at
So,
Phoebus?
so I was there I graduated from William Mary in 1993. So the spring of 1993, I was a student teacher at Phoebus High School. I can't remember the principal's name, but um, I think his name was Mr. Washington. But
Wow.
I had a great experience. Lakeisha Frett at the time was the
Yes.
top. Yeah, she was the top player in the country for girls basketball and went to Georgia.
One of the best
Um,
female basketball players I've ever seen.
so I got to go to some pep rallies and go to some basketball games. And I really, it was very kind of, I don't know, it was funny because when I came to Stonewall, although very different in terms of demographics and the population.
Sure.
Stonewall at the time was only 1,500 students, and Phoebus was about 1,200 at the time. And they both had an open school environment. They didn't have doors or
Doors
walls.
or windows, yeah.
No. So I kind of came there, and there, even though the students were from very different backgrounds. I mean, Hampton Phoebus had a very large military presence,
Yes.
uh, and they also had sort of an inner city environment.
Sure.
Uh,
Yeah. I grew
and
up in
so,
Newport
but
News,
I
New York.
mean, and I was at a rural area at Stonewall, but I mean, kids are kids, and it ultimately was, they all go through different struggles and challenges, and I enjoyed my time immensely.
No, see now you deter. I'm off that
Yeah,
other question. I want to talk about that.
yeah,
You were at Phoebus essentially when I
yeah.
was at Hampton High.
Okay,
Because when Keisha Fret was playing, I'm a few years behind her, but I was playing in Hampton High. So you were down there during, um, some golden era times. You're talking
oh
about
yeah.
at that time
Well,
had to be
Iverson,
Iverson. We call him Chuck, aka Allen
yeah,
Iverson, was at Bethel. Tony Rutland was his backcourt mate who went on to play at Wake Forest with Tim Duncan. You were, it's funny. My wife, who went to school and is friends with your wife, I remember I met her at Virginia Tech.
yeah,
She used to roll her eyes every time because we would talk so glowingly and prideful about the Tidewater, Hampton Roads region, excuse me, and all the great athletes we had. And but I will say this: when I was done with my career, and I moved up here. Obviously, I married her, but we were engaged. But I moved up here in 2000. Um, I remember as I started to do counseling and mentoring different kids in Prince William and Fairfax County, it was really evident that there was a lot of talent up here. I think the difference was the Hampton Roads Tidewater region, it was more not so much a priority, but the tradition was there going back to the days of Lawrence Taylor and so many great
yeah,
players across the region, even in places like Lafayette and Williamsburg and Norfolk and Portsmouth. And it was more condensed, even though you had the water separating the south side and the peninsula. I think we just had more so there was a lot more high schools, but you've seen now, as you mentioned, Manassas and Prince William County in general, the growth has been crazy. When I hear people like my wife and people who grew up here that went to Stonewall, that went to Osborne Park, and they talk about the growth of the county, how years ago nobody was even in Gainesville or Bristol or Haymarket.
yeah,
But for me, it's hard to imagine that because since I've been up here, it's always been heavily populated. But anyway, that's crazy. I know you never told me that you were down there teaching.
yeah, yeah. Just briefly, it was only for a semester, but it gave me a good foundation. It was a good experience working, in obviously a very different environment than I had been accustomed to. But like I said, you realize once you start teaching students that wherever you teach, it's all kids are really the same. They have the same basic
Yep,
needs. They want
yep.
you to, they want you to care about them. They want you to, be, engaged, listen to them, and obviously, hopefully you have some knowledge that you can impart to them that they'll be receptive to. But I mean, I worked with some fantastic people in a very short period of time that had been there for a long time, and they were, just great educators because really, that was the whole thing that really impressed me mostly about Hampton Roads area, the Phoebus, was just the strong community presence. It
It
has,
is. It still is.
I
Yeah.
mean, you could tell that when kids struggled, they made an effort to make sure that they were taken care of. And there were obviously a lot of successful students, as I mentioned before, but not just in the athletic area, but in the academic area as well. I mean, I worked with some really bright kids in a brief period of time, and the teachers had been there, and it was their community, and they made sure that uh, they provided a great education
Well, let me
for
just say this too, Dr. Nichols, man. Let me just thank you for saying that because this is your legacy spotlight and we're highlighting all the great things you've done. But I just want to say thank you for saying that. One thing that people from that area, like myself, despite all the good things I'm trying to do and have done, there's a stigma that's associated with, and this is any state, certain regions. You see it here in Northern Virginia. You see it in Prince William. But we've had to fight that stigma, being
Oh
from
yeah.
Hampton and Newport News, just like places in Richmond, where we are viewed differently because of the demographics and the environment we come from. But I appreciate you saying that, because that's why I do so much work I do with different high schools, specifically even at Unity Reed. With shout out to Miss Stephanie Nash. I'm doing her group, the job program, which has been so much fun, and
Yeah.
some great students there. So I appreciate you saying that, man. Thank you. Yeah, that means a
Well,
lot.
I mean, I've been through a lot of evolutions at Stonewall and Unity Reed, and uh, you know, I've I kind of feel the same way, that we're a great community. Yes, we have our challenges, we have our struggles, but the kids. I mean, you, as you know, your child goes there, and you've seen and you've worked with some of our teachers, and you've worked with our athletes, and also our students who are in academics, etc. I mean, I could list the accolades of our students, that are president at Virginia Tech and president at UVA, and receiving awards at Princeton University, and I don't want to just highlight
Mhm.
those students, but the kids that go into the military, or the kids that stay in their community and work in various businesses.
Yep.
The kids are very successful, but they don't always get appreciated, um, because of economics, and because of demographics. And so it's one thing in my career as an educator that I've really tried to. One of the reasons I've stayed at Unity Reed is because I really feel that highlighting and working with students who maybe don't have all the advantages of uh, some of the different families, but they're so talented. What they give back to our teachers, what our teachers give to them, who they become as young adults and leaders. And like I said, I'm just about to turn 50 next year. So I know kids that are 40, 30, 20.
Mm.
I know young adults that are out doing wonderful things, from all walks of life. And so I'll always, as my legacy, that's really what I want to um, kind of be known for, is just, supporting all students, regardless of, where they came from.
Absolutely. Well, let me
Yeah.
ask you this, man. You talked
Yeah.
about you were a student teacher in '94 at Stonewall, now Unity Reed
Yeah.
High School.
Yeah.
Um, I was not up here then. I came
Yeah.
up a few years later as I visited during spring break. But then I moved up here to Northern Virginia in 2000, and then a few years later moved to Manassas. And I've seen the growth. But talk about just from a personal standpoint. Um, does it sometimes hit you and your wife when you're riding around, you're going to different youth games, or you go to Manassas Mall, or you're even in the other side of the county, the east side of the county? Does it hit you how much this area, this region, or just Prince William has grown? You had the new high school being built, Gainesville High School, Patriot, Battlefield, Unity Reed, all the different schools. And you mentioned Unity Reed, like you said, when you were there in '94, 1500.
Yeah.
Now, when I come there, when the buses are out, you just got to park because you're going to wait. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
What do you think about it? Like, is it funny to you? Did you ever think it was going to be big?
It's kind of like I was 23 years old, 22 years old when I started at Stonewall. Um, in Prince William County, I kind of always considered myself more of a Fairfax County person when I started. And, I was fortunate enough that actually that Stonewall Jackson High School was the first school that offered me a job. So I owe, when you talk about leaving a legacy, my mentor is Mr. Bixby, the associate superintendent for middle schools. He hired me, and I've always appreciated him for giving me the opportunity as a young educator. It was just very different. I mean, there was no, Hilton had just opened, I think, in the early 90s.
Yep.
There was no Forest Park, there was no Freedom, there was no Battlefield, there was no Patriot, there was no, um, Colgan. There was, it was, I mean, it was still divided a little bit. When I say divided, I think East and West. just because of the geographic where we're
Mm-hmm.
located.
Mm-hmm.
We were, uh, you know, Stonewall was more of a rural school, and we obviously competed against Osborne and Osborne Park, but we also competed, furthers against the Fauquiers and everything like that. And then just over time, it just all of a sudden you could see it every year. We added 100 kids, and then 100 more, and then 100 more, and then from '94 to 2001, in 7 years, we doubled in size.
Mm.
They opened up Battlefield in 2002, three, and Freedom the same year. Two high schools in the same year. So
Mm-hmm.
both sides of the county were exploding. And then, over time, it seems like every few years we open up a new high school.
Yeah.
Now we have 100,000 students, and we're the, second largest school district in Virginia, and I don't know, the top 15 in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so it kind of happened without knowing it. You grow up and it just happens. And I kind of feel like my professional career, that's kind of what happened. Um, but there's a lot of opportunity in our county. With size, there are some advantages as far as resources, but there's also obviously you do lose a little bit of that smaller connection, I guess, that you had before.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it's advantageous where we are now, and we're going to continue to grow. And there's a lot of good things going on in our county, in our schools, and in our opportunities for young people.
Yeah, no, I remember I mentioned my wife and your wife, they
Yeah,
Stonewall the same year, but what's interesting is I remember a handful of years later, my sister-in-law, my wife's sister, graduated from Stonewall, and they had the graduation at I think it was called the Nissan Pavilion back then. Now it's called
yeah,
Just Blue Live. But I remember I was so happy her last name was Carter because it had to be at least 900 people graduating that day. And after they called her name, we took the pictures. I left and met everybody at the house because I was telling my friends down in the Tidewater region. I said, dude, the high schools up here are
yeah.
huge because you just had so many kids, in the graduating class, man. But it's just even me. I didn't grow up here in this area, but I've been up here for a long time now, and every year it continues to grow. But I will say this: it's not overwhelming growth because I still feel at home when I'm at a lot of these high schools, especially when I come out to your school. I still see a lot of the familiar faces. And it's interesting because when I come to the sporting events or even some of the, functions for, social events, even if it's not sports related, I feel welcome and I feel, at home. You have a lot of people in that school that really make you guys, people like myself, comfortable. Parents, I'm a parent.
Yeah.
And then even that video you guys just did, I want to say this on record on your Legacy Spotlight. I watched the new tour, the virtual tour
Yeah.
you and the students did, and uh, teachers and my wife and I watched it with my two younger children, and it was phenomenal. I thought it was very well done, produced. The kids were well spoken, and again, I mean, it's cool to see stuff like that. I always like when I see kids become part of their school and not just going there for their grades but also their activities and engagement. So that was another shout out and kudos to your staff in doing that.
Well,
Um,
that's been the hardest thing right now during the pandemic is, I mean, I started the Student Leadership Council program, the SLC, in our county
hmm
when I was a teacher.
hmm
My principal sent me out to a conference, and then now it's in most of the schools. But now we have the student senate, and we have a school board representative, and Unity Reed Ben Kim is our school board representative. But I mean, I'm big on student engagement and student centered life. So I really appreciate that that we have the opportunity for students, even in a virtual setting, to do things because they're missing out. That's one of the hardest things right now is not only they're trying to keep up with their academics, which they can do, although it's a struggle for many, but they're missing out on so many things that I really hope that when we do return, it will be sooner than later because that's what I miss. I've told people say, well, how are you doing as a principal during the pandemic? And I said, well, I'm a pilot without passengers every day.
mm,
I go to the building 3 days a week, and I'm there, and there's no activities for me to go to sporting events at night, and I miss those things. That's what makes high school fun. I mean, yes, the learning is the most important thing, but being a part of your community is what I enjoy. I look forward to Friday nights. I look forward to Tuesday night basketball games. I
Me
look forward
too.
to,
I
you
love it.
know,
I miss
so
it. It
I
is
mean,
very hard. It's awkward.
yeah, so that's I'm looking forward to a day when we can, return to some sense of normal and kids can do that now. I do think we'll come out stronger because of this. Um, kids are learning skills technology wise, and they're learning how to overcome adversity. Teachers are learning a lot of skills as professionals, but it's going on too long, so
Yeah,
it needs to
yeah.
end. It needs to end.
um, you mentioned sporting events, and there was a post during the quarantine that was on Facebook. I shared it. Are you aware? And again, I know you mentioned some of the people at Princeton, UVA, and Tech who
Yeah,
alumni, and I mentioned, Alexis Jones, the intern,
yeah,
but I shared it and I went through it and I looked um the Unity Reed Hall of Fame, Sports Hall of Fame you guys have. I was telling my wife, when you take a step back now, I have a lot of pride about my high school. I mean, you and I are friends on Facebook, and I'm very
yeah,
outspoken about the Virginia people in general, but especially guys from my high school and guys I competed against. But if you take a step back and look at the guys and women, the men and women who come in the athletic aspect, you talk about Raymond G, Jason Koch, Greg Stroman, Kim Graham, Tim Settle, okay? The Rankin young man, I forgot his name, the
yeah.
wrestler. One of the
Jeremy,
best, Jeremy, thank you. I should know that. I know his family very well, Sarana. And
I taught Jeremy.
I mean, so you talking about like, I mean,
Yeah,
do you admire it? Do you have the same reaction I do? Because I'm a competitor. I love sitting back. I'll go to games. People say, "Hey, you got a son or daughter here?" I'm like, "Nah, I'm just coming because this is going to be a great matchup." And my wife and I are both like that. But that's one of the things that stood out for me. Oh, I forget Chris Garrett, Ryan Williams. When I moved up here, I was like, "Hey, man,
yeah,
a lot of talent here. A lot of Kim Graham. I mean, my wife told me about her at Tech. She's one of the best sprinters in the history of VHSL
yeah.
sports. Are you
Olympic gold
aware?
medalist.
Olympic gold medalist. Um,
Yeah,
I mean, those names I mentioned, and anybody watching this, I apologize because I know there are more. But Raymond G, his record was just recently broken, but he was a phenomenal tailback. Um,
yeah.
when you think about all those men and women, I mean, does that make you feel good that you're part of their legacy and that they are alumni? And are you fans as well like me, or you just kind of just checking it out, watching, you know?
Oh no, I mean, I like I said, I grew up around sports. I'm an avid sports watcher. I think for many people, it's great for their physical health as well as their mental health. Um, and I encourage my own children. I
Mhm.
have a son who's 11 and a daughter who's 8. One's doing gymnastics and one is doing swimming. Trying to dabble in a little bit in golf. Um,
Awesome.
so it's sports gets a lot of accolades and it also gets maligned in some respects. Unfortunately, but it's it's a tremendous avenue for a young person to set goals and persevere
Mhm.
and chart their course because academics doesn't always hit the 15-year-old brain like it does maybe a 25-year-old brain. And so, I mean, to have that extra motivation, not only, to have some structure in your life, to also have some success, and to be a part of your community. I mean, I think whether it's like I said, I mean, my dad was the band booster president. Whether you're uh, playing in the symphonic band or playing in the marching band or
Mhm.
playing Friday nights on the football field or whatever, I mean, you have to do. You can't just study. You have to do.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where giving students the opportunity. So yeah, I'm a total fan. I mean, I'm you know whether it's Chris or Ryan or Timmy or Greg or any of those athletes. I track them, I follow them on Sundays and Saturdays when they were playing in college on Saturdays. I watched UVA beat North Carolina last night, and I saw Chase Chalmers jumping up and down on the sidelines.
Yeah, yeah.
I was cheering for Chase. I don't know if he's playing yet, but I know he will be at some point. He's only a redshirt freshman.
Awesome,
Um,
man.
so yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's
You,
it's
and you got some new guys. You got some they say youngins. You got
oh
Sean Murphy, who's ranked one of the top linebackers
yeah,
in the country, and then
yeah,
you also have, I always mispronounce his name, Talib, who is
yeah,
committed to
well, yeah,
Ohio State. So yeah, I mean the legacy goes on. I mean, it's not just with
yeah.
campaign. And I want to add to a very good friend of mine who I think, I'm sure you're aware of this. Her mother is the assistant principal at Patriot, Miss Lucas. Her daughter, also
Uh-huh.
a Stonewall alumni, Jackie Lucas, who's a
Okay.
judge. She's a judge here in
Wow.
Princeton County, one of the few minority judges here in the last several years they've ever even appointed as a judge. And she's also an alumni. That's why I said, when you take a step back and look at the alumni and the accomplishments of the people from your school, now Unity Reed, formerly known as Stonewall, is very impressive. And should be celebrated, So really cool, man. I'm glad I'm part of it, and so to speak. I do want to ask you also about this, Dr. Nichols.
Mhm.
We talk about Unity Reed High School, the name change and Stonewall. You guys, again, I'm not behind the scenes, and I know there's some things you're not
Mhm.
privileged to say because of, it's just stuff we don't need to know as people here in the public. But when you talk about all the things that you guys have seen in 2020, we've all been through. Your staff, your administration has been able to rise above and keep everybody united. With the name change, with the middle school and Unity Reed High School,
Mhm.
you guys have been able just to keep it moving. There hasn't really been any drama with that. I know there was a small group of people that wanted to keep it the same, but overall, it's been a smooth transition. I mean, are you proud about that? Or what were some of the things that you guys did? Was it something the board of supervisors told you we're going to change it, or is it an email, or how does that work?
Yeah, no. So being part of the community for so long, I went back to a Washington Post article in the early '90s,
Hmm.
uh, and it was discussed then, and so it's always been part of our dialogue and discussion, because there's people, rightfully so, who have had issue with it, and obviously with the recent developments in our society, it came to the forefront. Um, so it was kind of one of those things where at least from my perspective, uh, I was more, not if it's going to happen, but when.
Hmm.
Now, I didn't know if I was going to be the principal still, but it did kind of, it obviously happened quicker than I thought. Got a call one day, and I was asked, did I support the name change? And I said, absolutely. What do I, what is, I mean, it's not something I vote or approve of. It's recommendation from the superintendent. And this is all public knowledge that Dr. Waltz, made that decision to change the name of Unity Reed, Stonewall and Stonewall Middle, as part of the issues going on in our society. And the school board then started the renaming process. And, to be honest, I listened to all three public hearings. Um, and, once I was asked, um, I looked at it as an opportunity to progress and move forward. And I also looked at it as um, not necessarily erasing our history, but acknowledging our history. Because I
Hmm.
really think that you don't erase history, but acknowledging, where we came from as a society and where we're going. And so it made perfect sense to me that the timing was right. And um, I mean, it really, uh, I will honestly say that as the principal of the school, um, I don't think that I received any emails to the contrary. Now I saw some post on Facebooks and some alumni who were against it. And as you said, your wife went to Stonewall and my wife went to Stonewall, and
Yeah.
You know, it's not as easy for someone who didn't graduate from Stonewall Jackson High School to just say,
Hmm.
"Oh, you're going to change the name." But I mean, I think that the majority of alumni understood it and stand behind the decision. And as I think you get to maybe some people who graduated, I think it was generational to a certain degree. So no, there really wasn't. I mean, I listened to all the meetings, the 3 meetings, and it was like 9 out of 10 speakers were very pro. Yeah, let's do this, and they were involved. The kids were involved in the discussions. Um, the teachers were involved. We finished the gymnasium floor. We're still waiting on our um, stadium field to be changed. We're getting our new uniforms.
And the logo
Um,
looks tough, by the way.
yeah,
I love the
yeah,
the lion, and
yeah.
I love it. My daughter showed it to me when you guys first released it, and I was like, "Oh, that's tough." I love the logo, man. So that was I
Um,
like that.
and it's to me it's a natural progression in our society as to where we're headed. And as far as education, I think students can learn a lot from why things were done a certain way. Why it was named Stonewall Jackson in the first place. Obviously, there's a historical connection in Manassas, which to me kind of made it different than some place like in Texas,
Mm,
because there was at least it had a place and a setting and a context. Didn't make it necessarily something we should have done, but it was something that was done not necessarily for some of the same reasons as you might look at why they put statues and monuments in certain places to intimidate people or to, um, go against civil rights. I'm not saying it wasn't. I just mean it did have a different setting. Um, but as a historian, that's what I taught history. I never really truly understood um, some of the connection to the Civil War.
yeah,
You know,
no, thank you. And I agree.
yeah.
A few more questions, Dr. Nichols. When you look at your legacy so far, these next two questions are going to be about your legacy and what you've learned. But this first question I want to ask you, when you look at, you've been at now Unity Reed, formerly known as Stonewall High School,
Mhm.
Stonewall Jackson High School. What have you learned about yourself? A lot of times we're so busy. I know you already thinking about Monday. You got this.
Yeah.
There's an election Tuesday. There's so
Yeah.
many things going on. You have your family, your kids, and you and I both are fathers. What have you learned about your legacy so far when it comes to being an educator, a teacher, a mentor, a leader? As far as you know, since you've been at Stonewall, now Unity Reed, what have you learned so far? Just in perspective.
Um, so my leadership style, I was fortunate. I had Dr. Constantino as principal. We were Time Magazine School of the Year in 2001.
I
I
remember
had
that.
Mr. Yeah, I
Yeah,
had
I
Mr.
was
Huck,
there. I remember that.
I had Mr. Huckstein, who went on to lead Woodbridge High School and is now the athletic director of Colgan High School. And I mentioned my principal when I was a student at Annandale High School. Um, and the biggest thing that really, and I had Mr. Bixby, who was the associate superintendent for middle schools, who was one of my mentors. So I had people of tremendous character, tremendous um, knowledge, skill, um, who in different ways had different approaches to their leadership style and management of the school and leadership of the school. So I kind of tried to absorb things that I felt were successful in all three um, individuals. But really, I guess the biggest thing that I've always tried to impress upon is I consider myself a teacher first. So I still teach. I teach at Longwood University. I'm going to teach hopefully next year at University of Virginia for the Prince William County cohort. Uh,
Cool, man. That's
I'll
awesome.
get I'll get a chance to teach Miss Nash, who's going to become a future leader in Prince William County. I'm hoping.
Yes.
Um,
She's awesome.
but it's the people that you surround yourself with in life that make you successful. And obviously in your career, you do get some selection. So I try to obviously hire people that I feel will put students first, you know, work towards achieving our goals of giving our students opportunities, work with parents, etc. Um, but you also don't always get the choice when you're a leader. You have to work with people that you may or may not agree with on everything, and so you have to work with them too.
Yeah.
Because when you're trying to lead and you're trying to move an organization, there are going to be people that disagree with you, but you have to look at things from their perspective, and also be understanding of that. So I've really tried to, um, grow and learn over my time, and I really, the biggest thing is I always feel like I'm always learning. And I try to read a lot. I try to keep up. There's young people that are entering our profession right now that have a lot of skills that I don't have in terms of technology, which is very paramount right now during this pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've I've grown a lot as a leader in terms of my use of technology, um, and so I think just those, recognizing that as a leader you have to rely on other people, you have to trust other people, you have to support other people, and that you don't have all the answers is kind of what I've always tried to do. And listening to people, listening to the students when they have. I mean, I've had times when all the students maybe not agree with the decision that we've made, and trying to support them through that. But if you explain things and you provide your rationale and your perspective, generally speaking, I think adults and students and parents, uh, as long as you're honest and upfront about what your beliefs are and who you are, I think that they'll be supportive. As long as they know you care, and
Yep.
has always been my big thing. Show them that you care, and they will follow.
Yep. So true.
Yeah.
But one thing I must add, you do appear to be so even keel. Even every time I see you out and about, whether it's at Target or at a
Yeah.
school, and the kids are all out by the concession stand and they're getting rowdy. You just walk through, never elevate, get out of pocket, and it's really good to see, man. Everyone has a different style, but I was just thinking, I said, does he ever get like mad? Maybe I'll ask your wife that when I see you guys.
Ask my son. Ask my son and daughter.
Okay, I know what the answer is going to be, but I know what they're going to say. But we've come to the end of the show where I allow my guests to give their final thoughts, and my question to you, Dr. Nichols, is, I talked about your life lessons that you learned so far. I asked you about it, I should say, since you've been at Unity Reed, but now I want you to give your final thoughts to your viewers of the Legacy Spotlight, students, young principals, teachers, people coming up behind you. You've shared your views and your values. Just one piece of feedback you want to give them to keep inspiring them to keep pushing through. 2020 has been rough on everybody, but 2021 is fast approaching. What do you want to share just to keep everybody focused and motivated, to achieve their goals and dreams and become successful?
So one thing that I've really tried to do throughout my entire life, and I've heard this from my mom, who I said 79 years old, and my dad, who they're both in their almost 80 next year, is I've always just grown up in general around positive people. It doesn't necessarily mean that you don't see the negatives in things, but you have to, um, in looking at life and just as an individual, I mean, I always try to celebrate the accomplishments. And if you focus on the accomplishments, I believe that more accomplishments will follow. Um, Certainly there's challenges and there's crisis situations that you deal with that aren't positive, and we all have to get through them, just like we're getting through life right now. Every situation, it's cliche, but has a silver lining. And I try to look at life as a blessing. Whether it's my career has been a blessing. I mean, I never thought I'd be the principal of a high school. I remember back, when I first started, I asked my mother, I said, why can't I just get a teaching job? I graduated from William Mary, have a master's at Mason. I got shot down by 10 interviews. I said, when is it going to happen for me? And, overcoming, recognizing that you're in a particular place, not necessarily because of the things that you've done, but the things that other people have done to help you get there, and just appreciate that. I mean, I appreciate every day that I get to be principal of Unity Reed High School. I appreciate every day that I get to, I mean, I'm fortunate that, you asked me to do this, because, um, I don't look at it. I think you have to look at things from a positive perspective, and you have to look at things from a perspective of, this is truly, everything we do is a blessing, and our job is to give back. And that's kind of the way I lead my life.
Excellent way to live your
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
An excellent way to inspire others. And thank you, Dr. Nichols. It's been an honor to have you on, man. I really appreciate all the insight and wonderful things you said about your students, your families, your family, even your children, who know you get mad at them sometimes. But I
Not for
like,
long. Not for long.
and I'm very, very happy on the side note that you have so many hokey nieces and nephews. That really makes me smile.
Oh,
But
hey, they're I'm going to share this with them. They remind me every day. Well, I'm part of it too. The best, one of the best days of my life in the most recent time was, I got to, my niece and nephew graduated. They were the oldest, and when I earned my doctorate, they graduated the same year as I did. So we
oh
got to
wow,
celebrate the ceremony together. So that was kind of cool.
yeah,
They're 27 years old now, and I was at the time in my early 40s. So that I wasn't even going to do the ceremony, and my parents were like, "You got to do it,"
yeah.
and I did, and I'm glad that I did.
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, I'm glad you did, and I know Unity Reed's glad to have you. So thank you
Well,
again
thank you,
for a
sir.
wonderful legacy spotlight, and to all the Victory Life supporters and to all the Unity Reed supporters, Dr. Nichols fans and friends and family. We say thank you. And like I say every episode, no matter where you go, no matter what you do, make sure you have a positive impact and you leave a great legacy. Thank you, Dr. Nichols.
All right, thank you for inviting me, and I hope to see you soon.